Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to tackle what might just be the single most important case in all of American history. It's called Marbury versus Madison. And let me tell you, it's a wild story of bitter political rivals, a brilliant legal trap, and a decision that literally forged the power of the Supreme Court.
So, have you ever stopped to think about it? How did the Supreme Court become so powerful? A co-equal branch of government that gets the final say on what is or isn't constitutional. Well, the answer isn't written down neatly in the Constitution. It all goes back to this really messy political showdown way back in 1801. All right, so let's set the scene. Our story kicks off like so many great political dramas with a really nasty election. We're in that tense handover period between President John Adams and the incoming president, his rival, Thomas Jefferson.
Okay, so check out this timeline because things were a total mess. In late 1800, John Adams loses the presidency. Then his party loses control of Congress. So what do? In a last-ditch power grab, the outgoing party creates a bunch of new judge positions. And on his very last night in office, Adams is up late, scrambling to sign appointments to pack the courts with his friends. And this is where our guy, William Marbury, enters the picture. He was one of these so-called midnight judges. Now, his commission, that's the official piece of paper that makes his job real, it was signed, it was sealed, but in all the chaos, it just never got delivered to him. And when the new administration took over, the new Secretary of State, James Madison, well, he refused to hand it over. So, naturally, Marbury sues, and the case lands right in the lap of the Supreme Court, which is led by a brand new Chief Justice, John Marshall. And get this, Marshall was the same guy, Adams Secretary of State, who was supposed to deliver these commissions in the first place. A little awkward, right? Now he's heading a court that nobody really respects, and he's facing an absolutely impossible choice. Seriously, put yourself in his shoes for a second. The new president, Jefferson, hates the court and is just daring them to make a move. What do? And what a trap it was. I mean, look at this. If the court orders Madison to deliver the commission, President Jefferson is just going to laugh and ignore it. That would make the court look totally powerless. But if the court doesn't issue the order, it looks weak, like it's just caving to the president. Either way, the Supreme Court gets humiliated. It was a total catch-22, a classic no-win situation. So what does Marshall do? Does he panic? Nope. He pulls off this absolutely brilliant legal maneuver. He completely sidesteps the trap by reframing the entire case. He breaks it all down into 3 simple logical questions. It's actually super clever. Let's walk through it. First, he asks, does Marbury even have a legal right to this job in the first place? Second, if he does have a right, do our laws give him a way to fix the problem? And third, and this is the key one, is the specific fix he's asking for, called a writ of mandamus, something the Supreme Court can actually do. So, question 1. Does Marbury actually have a right to the job? The court's answer? A big, clear yes. The moment President Adams signed that paper and the seal was on it, the job was his. Delivering it was just a technicality. Legally, Marbury was a judge. Okay, so on to question 2. Do the laws provide a remedy? And again, the answer is yes. The court basically said, look, the whole point of civil liberty is that if you have a right and someone violates it, the law has to give you a way to get justice. Otherwise, we're not a government of laws. All right, so let's recap. Marbury has a right. The law says there has to be a remedy. So the court has to issue the order, right? I mean, it seems like a slam dunk. It really looks like Marshall is marching straight into that fight with President Jefferson that he can't possibly win. But this is where the magic happens. This is the moment Marshall pulls the rug out from under everybody. Just when you think he's cornered, he pivots to that third question and everything changes. Okay, so Marbury's whole case was based on this law, the Judiciary Act of 1789. And if you look at it, it seems pretty straightforward. Congress passed a law that says, yep, the Supreme Court can issue these kinds of orders to federal officials. Case closed, right? But then, Marshall pulls out the ultimate trump card, the Constitution itself. He points to Article 3, which spells out the court's powers, and it says the court can only hear cases from the very beginning, what's called original jurisdiction, in a few tiny instances. Everything else has to come up on appeal from lower courts. And boom, there it is. The conflict is staring them right in the face. Congress, in the Judiciary Act, had tried to give the Supreme Court a power that the Constitution itself said it didn't have. The 2 documents were in direct opposition.
And this sets the stage for maybe the most powerful and famous line ever written in a Supreme Court opinion. Marshall declares that when a regular law conflicts with the Constitution, it is the job of the courts to decide what the law truly is. It is, as he wrote, emphatically the province and duty of the Judicial Department to say what the law is. So the court's final ruling was incredible. They said that any law that goes against the Constitution is void. It's not a real law. So they told Marbury, "You're right, your rights were violated. But the law that you used to get here in the first place, it's unconstitutional, so we can't help you." So poor William Marbury never got his job as a judge. But in losing his little personal battle, his name became attached to a case that would give the Supreme Court its greatest and most lasting power. And that powerhouse concept, that big idea, has a name you've definitely heard: judicial review. It's the power of the courts to look at what the president and Congress do and say, nope, that violates the Constitution. It's the ultimate check. I mean, you really can't overstate how huge this was. This one decision basically built the modern Supreme Court as we know it. It established the court as a truly co-equal branch of government. It made the Constitution the undisputed supreme law of the land, and it gave the court the final say on what that law actually means. It was just genius, right? Think about it. By giving up this one tiny power he knew he couldn't enforce against the president anyway, Marshall grabbed the ultimate power for the court, the power to strike down acts of Congress. He lost the battle to win the war. And that really leaves us with this huge, lingering question, doesn't it? This incredible power of judicial review, it's not actually written down in the Constitution. The Supreme Court gave this power to itself in this one case. And it makes you think, should something that fundamental have been created that way? It's a debate that's still very much alive today. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.